All right, let's get right into it. We're going to unpack a really complex and pivotal moment in history, the Al-Aqsa Intifada.
So, by late 2000, the Oslo peace process, which for years felt like it was inching towards a solution, was just completely in flames. The big question is, why? Why did all those years of talks suddenly collapse into a brutal 5-year conflict? In this explainer, we're going to look at what lit the match, the deeper issues that fueled the fire, and the consequences that are still being felt today.
Okay, so to really get what happened, you have to start with the spark. Let's rewind to September 2000 and see how a really fragile peace process just completely exploded. Here's what went down. On September 28th, the Israeli opposition leader at the time, Ariel Sharon, visited the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, one of the holiest sites in Islam. He brought with him about 1,000 armed guards. For Palestinians, this was seen as an unbelievable provocation. And sure enough, the very next day, protests erupted, things got violent, and the situation just spiraled out of control with deadly speed. But you know, a single visit, no matter how provocative, doesn't just cause a 5-year war on its own. A spark only starts a fire if there's a tinderbox ready to ignite. We have to look at the frustrations that had been building for years. And the source material argues the real cause was the failure of the peace process itself. So for a lot of Palestinians, those 7 years of the Oslo process felt like a raw deal. Instead of moving closer to having their own state, they saw the opposite happening. They saw their land getting chopped up by more and more Israeli settlements and checkpoints. On top of that, their own government, the Palestinian Authority, was widely seen as corrupt and just not getting things done. And those huge final status issues, borders, refugees, Jerusalem, they were just stuck, completely stalled. And get this number really tells the story. During the 7 years of the peace process, the Israeli settler population in the occupied territories grew by a staggering 52%. Just let that sink in. For Palestinians on the ground, this wasn't peace. This was data. Hard proof that the occupation was actually getting more and more entrenched. And this right here is so important. A poll taken before Sharon's visit found that nearly half of all Palestinians already felt that armed attacks were a viable option. That tells you that faith in a peaceful solution was already hitting rock bottom. The stage was absolutely set for an explosion. So we've got the spark and we've got the tinderbox. Now, let's look at how these first protests spiraled into a much wider, more militarized conflict. A conflict that we can really break down into a few distinct phases. The source material really breaks the Intifada down into 3 stages. First, you have this absolute explosion of violence. It was the bloodiest period by far. Then there was a second phase with less violence, partly because of international efforts like the Roadmap for Peace. And finally, a third phase, which was all about major political shifts that eventually brought the conflict to a close. What followed was just this devastating, vicious cycle. You had Palestinian factions like Hamas and Fatah's Tanzim attacking settlements and carrying out horrific suicide bombings inside Israeli cities. And the response from the Israeli military was to reoccupy Palestinian towns, assassinate militant leaders, and even lay siege to Yasser Arafat's headquarters. You can see how each side's actions just fueled the others, creating this brutal, seemingly endless feedback loop. And then a few things happened that completely changed the game. In late 2004, the longtime Palestinian leader, Yasser Arafat, died. This created a huge power vacuum. His successor, Mahmoud Abbas, was elected with a promise to end the violence. And then came a real shocker. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, the same man whose visit helped spark the whole thing, ordered a complete unilateral withdrawal of every single Israeli soldier and settler from the Gaza Strip. So the fighting does eventually die down. But the conflict, it left these deep, permanent scars on both societies. Scars that honestly still define so much of the region today. The human cost was just staggering. Over those 5 years, more than 1,100 Israelis were killed. And for Palestinians, the number was almost 4 times higher, with over 4,100 deaths. And of course, behind every single one of those numbers is a shattered family, a devastated community. Now, in 2002, In direct response to the wave of suicide bombings, Israel began building something massive and highly visible, a barrier. A combination of concrete walls and high-tech fences that would eventually stretch for 750 kilometers. And this is where you see two completely different, totally irreconcilable stories emerge. Israel maintained its purpose was purely about security, stopping attackers from getting into its cities. But for Palestinians, the barrier's path, which was built mostly deep inside the West Bank, not on the old 1967 border, made it a concrete symbol of a land grab. It cut off communities from their farms, from schools, from each other. But maybe one of the biggest aftershocks of the Intifada was political. I mean, it was a genuine earthquake. In the 2006 elections, Hamas, an Islamist group that had been on the political fringes, won a stunning landslide victory. They took 56% of the seats, completely shattering the decades-long dominance of the Fatah Party. This was a result that would reshape Palestinian politics for years and years to come. The economic devastation was just off the charts. While Israel's economy took a big hit, the impact on the much more fragile Palestinian economy was catastrophic. In just 1 year, 2002, they lost the equivalent of an entire year's national income. Unemployment tripled. A staggering 65% of the population was pushed below the poverty line. In fact, a joint international report said the Palestinian economy had almost completely stopped. And all of this, the barrier, the hundreds of checkpoints, the settlements, it leads to this effect that the source material calls cantonization. Basically, it's the process where the West Bank got carved up into these disconnected islands, or cantons. It became almost impossible for people and goods to move freely, and that just crippled what was left of the economy and the social fabric.
So ultimately, the Al-Aqsa Intifada wasn't just a 5-year conflict. It was the definitive end of the Oslo era. It created new physical realities, like the separation barrier, and it created new political realities, like the rise of Hamas. And the legacy of those 5 years, the physical walls, the deep political divisions, and the profound distrust on both sides, it continues to shape everything for Israelis and Palestinians today. And it leaves us with this huge, lingering question about the future.